Hey, it's Rick, aka Concrete River. More tests, because all I do is flavor tests. So Flavorwest just put out a whole bunch of new flavors. I counted like 13 or 14 that showed up on Bull City Flavors website. And because I have the impulse control of a child, I went ahead and bought them all. So I have had them steeping for 3 days so far, so it seems a little bit early to judge some of the bakeries, but I decided it was probably good enough for some of the more sugary nonsense. So today I'm going to be doing a first-ish look at Flavorwest Sprinkles, Big Stick, and Star Candy. So starting off, we have the Flavorwest Sprinkles. Seems like an odd choice for a flavor. Nobody really ever says the sprinkles are the best part of a cake. At least I don't think they do. If you've ever ate sprinkles just by themselves, they're not as sweet as you'd think. They're kind of chalky. They even have like a little bit of, like you can actually taste the food coloring in there. They kind of taste like colored sweet cardboard, basically. But Flavor West decided to make a flavor of it, so we'll go ahead and give it a shot and see what happens. For all of my Flavor West tests, I usually start out at 2 and 4%. Generally, that gets me sort of in the range where I'd be using a Flavor West flavor, but with that said, it does vary. Just because these are new, went ahead and started at 2 and 4%, didn't have anybody else's experience to draw on, so we'll give it a shot. So, sprinkles at 2%. So at 2%, it's sweet, but it's not like obnoxiously sweet. It doesn't necessarily feel like a full candy flavor. It has some of that chalkier texture that you'd be looking for in sprinkles. The actual flavoring in here, I think I'm picking up some vanilla. There might be something a little bit more complex in there, but it just seems like kind of like an artificial chalky vanilla flavor. Yeah, I don't really pick up any kind of like fruitiness or anything that like tastes colored, but it does kind of have that dry vanilla, like sort of bordering on like an anise, like food coloring note to it, which is kind of spooky. Yeah, I mean at 2%, it pretty much just tastes like sprinkles, which I'm not sure why anybody would want something that tastes like sprinkles, but here you go. Notice it's super weird when I vape while staring into the camera. Like, it seems like something you don't want to make eye contact while you're doing. Yeah, 2%, pretty accurate to sprinkles. Bumping it up to the higher level, 4%. We'll give that a shot. Yeah, at 4%, it kind of tastes like generic cereal, like generic Lucky Charms, that kind of marshmallowy texture. It has that like sort of dry, chalky marshmallow to it. Yeah, vanilla's still there, but I'm getting like more of that like kind of like weird, almost chemical anise kind of back note on it. Um, like it tastes artificial, which is probably true to the profile. I'm not sure it's actually all that pleasant, but I mean, we're talking about sprinkles here. Yeah, kind of tastes like a mouthful of sprinkles. Dry, chalky, light vanilla. So I think while it's probably accurate, I kind of struggle a little bit to think of what I actually want to do with it. I think if you add some of this to like a cake flavor, you might get like a little bit of that birthday cake vibe, whatever the hell it is that people have decided separates birthday cake from normal cake. Might add some of that kind of like artificial sweetness to it. I'm not sure you're going to get like a discrete sprinkles texture. It's not like a really aggressive flavor. So I have a feeling it's going to get buried in mixes pretty easily. I think you might get some of like that sprinkle top note though, so it may stick around, but it feels like most of the flavors sort of right straight down the middle where all of your other flavors are going to be playing. Yeah, I mean it's not a bad sprinkle flavor. I'm kind of not completely sold on the application. It doesn't feel like it's going to mix well, but you leave that to a better mixer than me to figure out, I guess. Yeah, I mean Flavor West made a sprinkles flavor, so good for Flavor West. um, yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. I think overall it doesn't really rustle my jimmies. Let's see, kind of had to do that. Sorry. But it's a fairly accurate sprinkles flavor by itself. So, moving on, we have Flavor West Big Stick, which obviously sounds hugely phallic. But it looks like they don't have the actual descriptions out for the flavors yet, but it looks like it's one of the Good Humor Big Stick popsicles, which are like pineapple and cherry flavored theoretically. So, kind of expecting that kind of candy, cherry, pineapple. I have it at 2% here. So at 2%, I'm getting some pretty like mellow artificial, it's like a mellow artificial pineapple flavor. It doesn't really seem to have a lot of like texture and body to it. It's not very vivid, which is probably the 2% thing. I'm not picking up too much cherry there. It does seem to have like a little bit of that popsicle stickiness. It doesn't. I don't feel any cooling in there that instantly makes me think of Frozen, but it does have kind of a little bit of that syrupy texture. So yeah, it's that kind of like white gummy bear, candy, pineapple. The cherry isn't really prominent there. It doesn't seem to be standing out. I am getting like some really light, like medicinal, plasticky cherry notes, which should be fairly familiar with anybody who's ever actually tried to mix with a damn cherry. But yeah, 2% feels a little bit thin and weak. Bumping up to 4% now. Okay, there's a cherry. And it's not a good cherry. Yeah, the top half of that is all medicinal, sort of gnarly cherryness. Um, There's still that candy pineapple underneath at 4% as opposed to 2%. It feels like the candy pineapple's maybe a little bit sweeter. Um, but honestly, that medicinal cherry is kind of ruining it for me right now. It's sweet, but it's not like as sweet as I would expect for a popsicle flavor. I think some of that stickiness that I got down at 2%, that cherry's kind of messing with it a little bit. Yeah, I'm not digging that because of the cherry. I'm not gonna say that I'm more sensitive to artificial cherry flavors than anybody else, but they bug the shit out of me. So that might be a pass for me. I don't know. I gotta go ahead and I'll crank the percentages up and stuff when I do full Reddit reviews on it. Um, but yeah, not really digging that. Um, it was better at 2% than 4%. Shasta, hit me up. Like to get sponsored or something. Um, so what you'd use that for? If that cherry note doesn't really bother you, I think that's going to be a fairly versatile flavor. There was the slush craze of 2017, which seems to be waning, but that does have some of that kind of like syrupy sweetness, and it's very candy flavored. It seems like it would take cooling really well. Um, I'll go ahead and crank the percentages up for my full test, but it also feels like it can maybe use a little bit of sweetener. Like it's not really hitting that kind of like full on balls out syrupy sweet that I want for a popsicle, but it feels like some of the actual framework of the bounds for it are there. It seems like it just needs a little bit of accentuating. Since these are all new flavors, they don't have the MSDS up for them on Flavor West's website yet. But that doesn't taste like it has anything too gnarly in it. Flavor West has this really fun habit of trying to kill you with new and exotic cancers by throwing like fructose or sugar syrup in their concentrates. I don't really taste anything that seems like it's like they'd have like a real sugar syrup in there. So I'm assuming that one's clean, but I could be wrong. Doesn't seem like that. Doesn't have that really like flat, hot, aggressive sweetness that you get from some of their sugar sweetened flavors, though. Actually, doesn't even feel like it has like a ton of sucralose in it, like something like their grape soda. Yeah, not my favorite, but if you don't mind fake cherry flavors, that and you want something in that kind of candy pineapple vein with fake cherry, you could probably do worse. So the last test, I have Star Candy, which seems to be their version of Starbursts. Starting with it at 2%. Okay, so it doesn't feel like it's like any specific kind of Starburst. It definitely tastes like the original mix of Starburst. So I think that's cherry, strawberry, lemon, and orange, and I'm getting a good deal of citrus from it. It has that kind of candy tartness, which is nice. Yeah, it's a good balance of like tart and sweet. Seems a little bit citrus heavy, but I can't taste strawberries all that well, so there may be some more strawberry that I'm not picking up. I'm not really getting too much in the way of cherry. There just seemed to be like a little bit of like a generic sort of red fruit candy sweetness to it. Like it isn't just a straight lemon and orange flavor. There's something else going on in there. Yeah, I'm actually really liking the tart note there. That's a really good candy tart. I think the area where it falls down, at least at 2%, it doesn't have much texture to it. So it's like the taste of Starburst, but it doesn't have that like half taffy, half hard candy, waxy kind of Starburst texture. Like I think you could probably pick out the flavor, but the texture doesn't really seem like it's on point. Cranking it up to 4%. Okay, so I'm still missing the texture, which is kind of a letdown. I'd like that texture in there, but in terms of flavor, it's actually really not a bad mixed Starburst flavor. It's like taking just a handful of like random colored ones and shoving it in your mouth, I guess. Because I'm definitely getting some lemon, some orange, and then something red in there. So it seems like all of them at the same time. At 4%, it's sweet. It's definitely on the sweet side. Doesn't taste like there's any sugar syrup in there, but if there was going to be one out of these, this definitely feels like it would be that one. The sweetness is a little bit warm and flat, but it's nowhere. But it's not like Flavorwest Mojito, like sweet where you can just taste the burnt sugar. So if there is any sugar in there, it doesn't feel like it's all that overwhelming. But yeah, that's not a bad candy fruit flavor actually. I think you could probably throw some texturizers at it. Maybe some with a little bit of wax to it, some vanilla swirl. Like, doesn't feel like it's strongly flavored enough for like one of the real flavors candy bases, but it could probably stand up to the Flavorwest candy bases pretty well. Yeah, it just needs a little bit more mouthfeel to it. But I could see using it as the actual fruit flavor note in like a generic fruity candy. I think Skittles, the lime in Skittles really stands out to me. So maybe that with a little bit extra lime and some grape would make a pretty decent like Skittles kind of sweetness vape. It's definitely not bad. It's just kind of lacking that texture department. So I will update the actual like description on the video and shit with the full-on reviews that I do for Reddit after I get those done. But yeah, that was kind of my first take on those. Not a big fan of the Big Stick. The sprinkles is interesting, but I don't know what the hell to do with it. Star Candy seems like the winner out of these three at least. It's really not a bad Starburst flavor, if not like a Starburst texture. So I have about 10 more Flavorwest flavors to go over in the next couple weeks. My plan is to post a video probably on Monday or Tuesday. They have a birthday cake, a chocolate cake, a white cake, a sponge cake, like a Twinkie flavor, that I want to go through and do all in one roundup. So that'll probably end up being my next video. They have some interesting stuff. They have a butter beer in there, which I don't know if it tastes whimsical. Like, I'm not sure what butterbeer is supposed to taste like, but I'm sure it's whimsical as fuck. They have s'mores, funnel cake, glazed donut, a couple others in there. They have a malt flavor, which smells horrifying, so I'm excited for that one. But yeah, next couple of weeks, I'm going to be doing these new Flavorwest flavors.